Alright, I'm going to take a look at a game I just got recently on eBay for a pretty cheap price, probably because it's old and not a particularly sought after game. I suppose it might be considered rare. I'm sure NobleKnight.com charges an arm and a leg for it, but I got it for about $10 on eBay. Old GDW game. Game Designers Workshop, one of the many long defunct wargame designers of yore. I think this game came out in the late 70s, maybe like 78, 79, something like that. It's called Bloodtree Rebellion, guerrilla warfare on the planet Somber. And as you can see there, a very dated looking sci-fi image on the cover, although I have to admit, for some reason it sort of appeals to me, and maybe it's because of the dated look to it, and I don't know. I also like the fact that it's in black and white. Something about that just seems sort of charming or something. Of course, the name of the game itself, Bloodtree Rebellion, is in red, which makes sense. You're talking about Bloodtree. What I've read about this game, and I don't know if the story is apocryphal, it might be, that the designer originally wanted to do a game, because you'll notice it's about guerrilla warfare. The designer originally wanted to do a game about Vietnam and was told by the publisher that, well, the Vietnam games aren't going to sell, so make it about science fiction. People will buy that. I don't really know if that's true or not, but it kind of makes sense. In the late 70s, Vietnam was not a popular topic in the United States. Either for film or for gaming or anything like that. So, a little too soon, I guess. So here we have a science fiction game that really was maybe originally intended to be about Vietnam. Anyway, the concept of it, the guerrilla warfare aspect, intrigued me, as well as the sort of topic of it. So something about it appealed to me, and for $10, why not? So we'll take a look in the box here. I may do some video playthrough of this too, just because I'm sure there's no video coverage of a game this old and obscure out there on the internet. So we'll open up the box. It's one of these flat boxes, similar, actually almost the exact same size as the old Avalon Hill, Siege of Jerusalem, and Magic Realm boxes. In fact, I've got a space there because it fits into that slot perfectly next to those two boxes. So, the annoying, odd, flat boxes that, unless you've carefully allocated your shelf space, you're going to struggle to find a good place to put them because they're so weird shaped. So, anyway, so we get the map here on top, and I'll unfold that in a second. We'll go through the other components first. Rules, and this was in really good shape when I got it. It's actually very good. All the components in very good shape. The rules, not particularly long. You got unit identification chart on the back of the rules. I usually hate when they do this. I really wish games would have a separate chart with the unit identification stuff on it. Usually it's either in the first couple pages of the rules or stuck on the back of the rules like this. But there's only 15 pages of rules, so not too many. And this looks like, at the end here, looks more like designer notes. Or no, I guess it's just background on the setting, the science fiction setting. The interesting thing about these rules, though, is that the paper, and you can't really see it on the camera, but they are almost, you can see that sort of sheen there, glossy rules, which I thought was very interesting for the time period. You didn't usually see, this sort of glossy style paper. Not really glossy. It's like a sort of almost like a satin finish paper. But either way, uncommon for rules at the time, which, in some cases they were either just regular paper, or they were, a tiny folded up piece of paper. I'm thinking of like Robin Hood or something from Avalon Hill. So there's the rules, and then we've got sort of charts here. And here you can see these are a layout of charts for various units in the game. And this is fairly decent cardstock, not super thick, but not too thin either. And then here's a similar type chart for your guerrillas, of where you're sort of allocating out manpower to your different zones within the maps, presumably. CRT, only, I believe, and on the back, a color terrain effects chart on the cardstock. Another thing kind of rare for the time to see color printing on these charts like this. So here's the CRT, and I think, which doesn't look too complicated for games at the time, I think there's only one of these in here too. Yeah, because this is a unit organization chart for the Myken, one of the sci-fi races in the game. Probably, if this were a Vietnam game, they would probably be the United States, since the other ones, the green ones, were the guerrillas. So here's the counter sheets. A little on the warped side over the years, but the thing I found, I've cut out counters from fairly warped counter sheets like these, and the counters themselves are always fine. The sheet, is bent like that, but the counters themselves are too small to register a bend like that, so they always turn out okay. The biggest issue with old counter sheets like these is going to be the die cutting, which, as you can see, is fairly primitive, but unlike a lot of other games of the era, you'll notice, I don't know how well it'll show up on camera or not a lot of side nibs, which is good. There's some of these, I'm thinking of old Victory Games things in particular, or some Avalon Hill titles. Like every other counter would sort of have a side nib on it somewhere, which is irritating for those of us who like to clip our counters. Oh, and also common for games at the time, these are not back printed counters. I don't think either one is. Nope. More the same here, and again the same sort of bent counter sheet. But for a game this old, that's actually fairly common. And as I said, not usually too much of an issue. So again, the counters look like they're in great shape and should be fairly easy to clip. Not the most even of die cutting jobs, which makes sometimes can wreak a little havoc on my Organ Laminations counter cutter that I use, or counter clipper that I use to clip the corners on these, but shouldn't be too much of an issue. So, interestingly, you'll notice that this uses NATO. The counters use NATO iconography on there, which I think is kind of interesting for a sci-fi game. You don't usually see it in sci-fi games. On the other hand, there's not a lot of sci-fi games that are really true hex and counter war games, which I think this one really is. And then here's this organizational, it's your turn record chart, and you get reinforcements and so forth. And I guess these are the cities. So this is like an insert of the main cities on the board, and presumably and you can see these things are marked in different ways: health, retail. So these cities are broken down into various districts, and presumably this is based on where the guerrillas might try and hit within a city, and where you would want to accordingly want to defend against the guerrillas in a city. So I assume that's what the chart's used for. I have not read the rules for this yet, so I don't know, but that's what it looks like to me. And you can see here actually where it says, like this city is Robachi Put in hex 1135. So, and then you can see it actually refers to the surrounding hexes of the city there. So it's like a breakdown of the city hex into many hexes of its own. It's kind of cool. So, and I'll see if I can. The map's not too big. I may be able to open it up here one-handed. Pardon the shakiness of the camera. Yeah, so fairly simple four-folded map. Rather ugly, but not, looks fairly standard for maps of the era. Not quite the, old SPI Redmond Simonson level of elegance to it, but clear and functional. And we are dealing with a sci-fi universe here, so maybe some weird sort of terrain features like, whoops, whatever the hell that is. I've got my terrain effects chart underneath here. Actually kind of curious to see what some of these weird looking things are. Tubers. So it's a giant, basically giant mushrooms or mushroom-like, well no, tubers, not mushrooms, thinking like green onions. Aren't things like that tubers? Sort of tube-shaped things that grow up out of the ground. Maybe, I don't know. The rivers are red, even though apparently the seas are blue. Maybe they thought it would just be too weird to have red seas on here, I don't know. Otherwise everything else is fairly standard. You get your cities, well Glyph Mound, I guess that's not very standard, but forest, mountains, tuber plains. So, a universe ever so slightly different, or a world ever so slightly different from our own. But you can see there's then the cities that are noted on that particular insert. So anyway, it should be interesting. I'm kind of looking forward to trying this out, just because it strikes me as sort of weird, kind of obscure, quirky game. So I'm always interested in things like that. So I will set it up and give it a try, and maybe even record some video. But don't hold me to it. I promise that all the time and almost never do it.